Who is the most famous human who ever lived? Not the greatest, not the smartest, not the richest, the most famous. At first, the question sounds easy. Ask 100 people and you'll probably get the same handful of answers. Einstein, Michael Jackson, Napoleon, maybe Shakespeare, maybe even Elon Musk if you ask the internet. But there's a problem. Most of us confuse fame with popularity. We confuse fame with influence, and we definitely confuse fame with recency. Because being famous for 20 years is very different from being famous for 2,000. So today, we're settling the question. We're putting history's biggest names into a tournament and finding out who truly deserves the title of the most famous person who ever lived. The rules are simple: global recognition, longevity, cultural impact, and most importantly, how many people actually know who you are. Let's begin. Our first contender is William Shakespeare. 400 years after his death, his plays are still performed around the world. His stories have been translated into dozens of languages. Even people who have never read Shakespeare can usually recognize names like Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, or Hamlet, and chances are you've quoted him without even realizing it. Shakespeare's influence on literature is enormous. But there's a problem. Outside the English-speaking world, recognition drops dramatically. He's famous, very famous, just not famous enough. Shakespeare is eliminated. Next is Michael Jackson. For millions of people, he was the most recognizable entertainer on Earth. His music reached nearly every continent. His dance moves became global icons. Even people who have never listened to an entire Michael Jackson song can usually recognize the moonwalk. That's extraordinary. But celebrity fame has a weakness: time. 100 years from now, people may still know Michael Jackson. 500 years from now, that's much harder to predict. Compared to history's oldest legends, his fame simply hasn't had enough time to prove itself. Michael Jackson is out. Then there's Confucius. More than 2,000 years after his death, his teachings still influence education, government, ethics, and culture across East Asia. Entire civilizations were shaped by his ideas. His impact is impossible to ignore. But fame isn't the same as influence. While Confucius is deeply important in many parts of the world, billions of people outside East Asia know little about him. His influence advances, his recognition doesn't. Confucius is eliminated. Few people changed the map of the world more dramatically than Genghis Khan. He built the largest contiguous empire in human history. His armies transformed Eurasia. His descendants ruled vast territories, and his name still appears in classrooms around the world. Yet most people know only the name, not the story, not the details. Compared to the finalists, his recognition is surprisingly shallow. Genghis Khan is eliminated. Napoleon Bonaparte might be history's most recognizable military leader. The hat alone is famous. His campaigns reshaped Europe. His legal reforms still influence governments today. And centuries later, people continue debating his legacy. But once again, geography becomes a problem. Napoleon's fame is strongest in Europe and regions heavily influenced by European history. Global recognition helps him survive this long, but it won't carry him any further. Napoleon is eliminated. Then we arrive at Julius Caesar. More than 2,000 years later, people still know his name. Not just his name, his title. Caesar became Kaiser. Caesar became Tsar. Few individuals have left a linguistic footprint this large. His assassination remains one of the most famous events in history. His influence helped shape the Western world. But even Caesar eventually runs into the same wall as the others. He is remembered primarily because people study history. The finalists are remembered whether people study history or not. Caesar is eliminated. Albert Einstein accomplished something almost no scientist has ever achieved. He became a global symbol. People who know nothing about physics still know Einstein. His face became shorthand for intelligence itself. His wild hair, his photographs, his name. In many places, Einstein simply means genius. That's remarkable. But scientific fame has limits. Most people recognize Einstein because of education, media, and modern culture. His fame is enormous, yet compared to the final contenders, it remains relatively young. Einstein is eliminated. Only three remain: Buddha, Muhammad, and Jesus. At this point, we're no longer comparing celebrities, rulers, or scientists. We're comparing names that survived centuries, names that crossed continents, names known by billions. The Buddha's influence has lasted for more than 2,500 years. His teaching spread across Asia and eventually much of the world. Meditation, mindfulness, philosophy, ideas associated with him continue shaping lives today. Empires rose and fell, kingdoms vanished. His name remained. Very few historical figures can claim that kind of longevity. But even with his enormous influence, recognition remains strongest in particular regions of the world. That matters, because our question isn't who was most influential, it's who was most famous. Buddha is eliminated. Now we reach Muhammad. More than 1 billion people know his name. His influence stretches across continents, across cultures, across centuries. His name remains one of the most common names on earth. His legacy shaped governments, laws, languages, art, architecture, and entire civilizations. In terms of global influence, he stands among the most significant people who ever lived. If this competition were purely about influence, there would be a strong argument for placing him first. But fame requires one final test: recognition. Not among millions, not among billions, among humanity itself. Which leaves one final contender: Jesus. Whether someone is religious or not, there is a very good chance they've heard the name. For roughly 2,000 years, his story has spread across continents and cultures. His life has been depicted in art, literature, music, film, education, and public life. His story has been translated into thousands of languages. His name is recognized in countries with vastly different religions, cultures, and histories. Billions know him today. Billions knew him before, and countless more will likely know him in the future. When you combine global reach, historical longevity, cultural impact, and sheer recognition, Jesus stands alone. Not necessarily as the greatest person, not necessarily as the most influential, but as the most famous. And maybe that's the strangest part. Out of the more than 100 billion humans who have ever lived, only a handful remain known across centuries. Most people who ever lived left no record. No statue, no book, no photograph, no memory. Yet somehow, a few names survived. That's what fame really is: memory. A person's ability to remain alive in the minds of people they will never meet. And somewhere in the world right now, the next name on that list may already be alive. We just don't know who it is yet. Context unknown.